You want this meatball? Is that what you want? It can't even run fast enough. We got our first snowfall here. We got about 6 inches yesterday, but it's already starting to melt away. Roscoe. Good boy. Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy, Roscoe? Yeah. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Diesel Creek. Not going to be working on anything diesel powered today, unfortunately, but something equally as unique and exciting in my opinion. This Wisconsin powered 1950s Schramm air compressor. There was one previous video on this compressor you guys have seen. If you haven't seen that, you're going to want to check that out. But if you haven't, quick recap. I found this thing sitting in somebody's basement. Well, actually, they listed it on Facebook Marketplace. I found this thing on Facebook Marketplace for $200, and it had been sitting for approximately 30 years. The guy I got it from said that his grandfather had used it in a cemetery to work on headstones. So, judging by looking at the unit, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of hours on this machine. Looks like it's probably pretty low use before it got put away. And it's a pretty neat just time capsule piece. It's a unique design. This side of the machine we have, this is a V4 engine, a Wisconsin engine that has been converted to compress air on these two cylinders. And then on this side we have our typical spark plug arrangement, and this side is what drives the other two sides. So pretty neat design. And then we have a 20-gallon, I think, air tank back here, and it should make some pretty good air for us, and maybe even able to run a small jackhammer. So in that last video I was able to get this thing fired up. We had to take the carburetor off, clean it out really good. It was super disgusting, but I managed to get it running after I fixed a pinhole in the float. Got it running for maybe 20 seconds or so at the most, and it sounded pretty good, but then it started blowing gas everywhere, and I believe we have a leaking needle and seat, as well as might need to adjust that float since there's some extra weight on it from the stuff I used to patch it. Being that this unit is so old and out of the ordinary, parts are a little harder to come by, but a lot of you did send me a link to a carburetor kit that managed to fit this thing. So this is a Marvel Schebler VH32 carburetor, even used in airplanes, which is pretty neat, I thought. So I got a basic rebuild kit here for it, and I can see it even has a gauge in there, probably for adjusting our float, so that's pretty neat. And we're going to go ahead and get that thing installed today and hopefully get this baby running and functioning, and maybe we'll be able to use it. There were some previous concerns with a couple things, namely the air compressor tank back here. A lot of people, and myself included, were a little skeptical of an air tank that's that old, because I guarantee you if you look inside my big air compressor here, which, you know, doesn't get used a whole lot as far as a shop setting. I mean, I use it every day, but it still doesn't get a lot of use on it compared to something that's a professional shop, something like that. So I picked this tank. This compressor was bought in 2017, and I'm sure if you looked inside of it, it would have some surface rust in it. I do drain the water out frequently, but there's a lot of moisture in compressed air, and the tanks usually aren't coated in any way to prevent rusting. So they start to rust pretty quick. So a lot of people in the previous video had asked about the specs of the compressor on this thing, what kind of air it was putting out. So this is a Schramm model 35-H, and according to this tag it has 20 CFM actual at 1800 RPM and 190 PSI. And that's pretty darn good considering my big stationary shop compressor over here has a 5 horsepower electric motor on it, and it only puts out 16.5 CFM at max pressure of 175 PSI. So This thing is quite a bit more air coming out of it than that big thing. Another thing that got a lot of people commenting on the last video about this thing was the state of the compressor tank here, which admittedly was something that was in the back of my mind and I was pretty concerned with as well. Air tanks are dangerous after they get so old because usually they get pretty rusty inside from the moisture and the compressed air. They usually rot from the inside out, and I've seen some pretty horrific videos of air tanks that fail, and I'm talking about little teeny Craftsman piece of junk compressors, not big high pressure industrial type compressor tanks. So since the moment I picked this thing up, that's been in my mind, and I finally decided to pull this plug out and see what's in there. I already had it loosened. Actually, I've already had it out. And if you follow me on Instagram, you've already seen this. I was blown away by what's inside of this tank. So back here on the battery tray, lots of acid had leaked out and kind of started eating at the battery tray, as well as run over and gotten on the top of this tank and started to cause a little bit of, I don't know if you'd call it corrosion or rust, probably corrosion. So a little bit of acid had spilled over onto the tank and started to cause a good bit of corrosion up there too. But it really doesn't look like it ate anything more than the paint from this point. Inside the tank is a different story. Let's see if we can't have a look inside of this tank. Can you guys see? How amazing is that? There isn't hardly any rust at all in this tank. There's a teeny little bit of surface rust. I don't know if you guys can see up at the very top there. Hardly anything to write home about. And honestly, if you could get in there and wipe it with some oil, it'd probably just go away. It's all just surface rust. I'll stick a picture up right now that I took with my phone that shows it a little bit better, but you can see that yellow writing over there? That actually says the Schramm job number on it still, from the piece of flat steel that was rolled up into this tank all those years ago. That is pretty darn impressive and a true statement to a quality product there. While I'm showing you inside tanks, I'll go ahead and show you the inside of this fuel tank as well. In the previous episode, you guys saw me drain the old sludge Minwax gas out of this thing. And really, this tank looks pretty darn good. There is a little bit of surface rust in here. Nothing that's going to compromise our tank at all. Little teeny bit of varnished gas still puddled up there. We'll go ahead and try to get that diluted and wiped out with a rag. But really, the tank looks pretty darn good and doesn't even need much cleaning. What does need cleaning though is this nasty battery tray. Let's go ahead and get all this corrosion and scale and crap sucked out of here. Loud noise. Oh yeah, we're good. None of this is threatening at all. I just ate the paint off. Everything looks good underneath here. So we got the battery tray cleaned up good there, and the corrosion all knocked off the tank. Looks really good, like I said. One of the big reasons I really like this unit is just the looks of it and the patina and everything that it has. It has a really, really neat old style to it and a really original look to it. Alright, now we can get on to the real work here. We'll go ahead and get this carburetor zipped back out of here and work on putting our kit into it. I'm going to take this thing on and off of here enough times that I'm getting to be a pro at it. There's our temporary tank. The top bolt here that holds the carburetor on actually already pulled out, and we'll address that in a minute here. This rod should just unthread right out of here, and it does. That's an accomplishment right there. All the other Wisconsins that I've worked on, these little teeny threaded rods that go into your carburetor linkage, they're always just rusted over to the point where they don't do anything anymore. Part of that is just my location in the country. Everything is destroyed by rust, but a lot of that just speaks to the age and nature of something this old. Choke cable removed. So this guy that we see jiggling around here right now, hanging off of this piece of copper line, this gets stacked into our carburetor sandwich here. Whenever we put the bolt through that, that holds everything together. But what this is a pneumatic throttle control. This line runs up here to a regulator and back to the tank. So what that does is when we get so much pressure built up in the tank, the air pressure should push out this plunger here. I can't make it move, but it should push the plunger out and throttle down the carburetor. So I know a way that we can test that. We're just going to go ahead and pull this thing off of here and stick our air line up to it and prove that it works. So I started thinking, instead of pulling that actuator, that throttle actuator off of there, why not just test pressurize the entire system before, that way you can rule out issues with the compressor on this unit. So we can use the stationary compressor here in the shop to backfeed into the tank and pressurize everything, and that should also pressurize that throttle arm and prove that it works. So I threw together this little janky fly-by-night setup using just about every bushing and pipe fitting I had in the drawer. But we should be able to put air in here, read this pressure, because I know this gauge is good, and that should also be able to read on these gauges. Well, this one, these two are for other things, but this one here should also read the same, and then we'll know if that gauge is any good. It's especially questionable since the glass is out of it. All right, got our airline plumbed in. Let's go ahead and slowly start putting pressure to it. We're climbing. I believe this tank is set to 160, so we should be able to get 160 reading over here as well. This gauge maxes out at 100. Not sure if we're going to push it to 160 or not. We're reading 35 and climbing over here. That checks out with our big gauge over here. So that looks good. Not sure at what pressure this throttle arm is going to start moving, but it looks to me like this regulator here will determine that. So I shut the air off a couple seconds ago, and we have one leak up here, but I'm not so sure that it's not intentional. The top of our regulator here has air coming out of it. I'm going to go ahead and open this valve and bury the needle. We could hurt the gauge doing that, going so far past its max, but I've got a bunch of those gauges. I'm not too afraid of it. There it goes. Now when the pressure bleeds down, it should suck that thing back in. I'm going to go ahead and let the pressure out now. There it goes. It's sucked back in at about 90. Cool. Awesome. The throttle's working just about perfect, I'd say. So I got this carburetor overhaul kit from a place called McDonald's Carb. And they must be some pretty cool guys over there, because as you can tell, I'm a pretty big sticker fan. I don't want to see any red on this toolbox when I'm done. I want it to be all stickers. So every time I order something, if I can put it in the comments or remarks on the order, I ask for stickers. And they sent me a whole pack of random stickers. I was more intending the McDonald's Carb stickers, but maybe they don't have them or whatever. But big shout out to those guys. Thanks a lot. That's pretty cool. Anyway, let's get this baby torn apart and put the new parts in it. Some of you guys have spotted it in previous videos, but a little shop pro tip that I can pass along is keep all your Chinese takeout containers because they all nest together really nice, and you can use the lids and the trays as parts trays. See? And then if you got something you know you're not going to put back together for a while, just go ahead and snap the lid on her, write it on there, and there you go. And your addiction to Chinese food helps keep something stocked in the shop. Now, in an attempt to keep this thing from leaking, last time I used some of this Permatex Forma gasket number 2, which some people argued is not rated for fuel, but it says right on here it's rated for fuel oils, diesel oils, engine oils, all that. So that was not my issue. Oh man. There we go. These look like very nice components, very well made. This kit ran me like 21 bucks, I think. That's not bad at all. So pretty much the only parts we're going to end up putting into this thing is the needle and seat, and maybe these gaskets for our throttle shaft here, because if you can see that, the throttle shaft has a bit of play in it, and when it gets worn like that, it'll start sucking air from around that throttle shaft, and it'll be impossible to get to run right. So to get this throttle shaft out, we're going to have to take off this throttle control arm and our butterfly from down in here. But first we need to indicate our location on the shaft here, so we'll get a Sharpie and mark that. Now we can just stick that right back in the same position whenever we put it back together. There we go. Got our throttle plate out. Now this thing should just slide right out of here. There we go. Looks good. We'll probably clean this up with a little bit of Scotch-Brite pad, because you don't want to. You want to get the gunk off of it, but you don't want to wear into the brass any more than it's probably already worn at the pivot points here. I'm running my fingernail across there. This is the pivot, and I can feel it's got a little ridge. These throttle seals can be quite fun to get out of here, but I'm actually having pretty good luck so far. There we go. So there's what the old one looks like. It's just a little brass thing that pushes in there. There's the new one, and then one of these goes behind it and gets pinched in there. New one of these guys. I'll just go ahead and use a little tappy tap. Seated. Now before reassembling this thing, we have to address the issue here. As I mentioned before, I removed the carburetor. I took this top bolt out and the threads actually came with it. And when I removed the bottom bolt, there's not much left of those threads either. And it already looks to me like somebody's repaired this with a Healy coil once. So we're gonna do it again. So if you've never used a Healy coil, there's the basic gist of it, you're drilling it out and tapping it for a larger size, and then you are running one of these threaded inserts down in there to make it the proper size once more. Unless helicoil, or there's another brand of helicoil I don't know about, has changed the sizes they use, this has never been done for this particular unit. Honestly, for our application, we could probably just get away with even just drilling it and tapping it oversize and using the bigger bolts, but might get into a little bit of clearance issue with the heads. So we're going to go ahead and install helicoils. There we go. The next step here, we're going to give a little bit of oil in these holes again. And we're going to run a tap through them here. I like to run taps in the drill because you can adjust the chuck to slip it before you damage anything. And even if you don't use the chuck, odds are that the tap will probably spin inside of your inside of the chuck before it damages anything. And it's just easy to keep them straight, and you can back up and switch positions really quick and see. There we go. Beautiful new threads. Beautiful new threads to run our thread adapter into, our threaded insert. Now, from the drilling and tapping process, we do have a slight ridge on both of these, so I'm going to go ahead and just hit this on the belt sander real quick and take that off. Now we take the special installation tool here, and go ahead and thread it down into our threaded insert, and the tool will engage this piece at the bottom here and allow you to just thread it right in there. Actually, I brought this one too far. Luckily, in this scenario, we can just run it straight through and do it again because you can't back these out. It's a one-way thing. So we can run this all the way out and put it back in from the other side. All right, we got our threaded holes all fixed up here. I blew all the metal shavings and stuff out of it. So we're good to go ahead and start reassembly on this baby. Okay, got our carburetor completely reassembled here, and we are ready to toss it back in there. Fingers crossed this thing's going to work this time and not start spewing fuel everywhere again. I did readjust the float, so hopefully that helps. Getting it into the hole is only half the battle. Getting it threaded into the hole is the whole battle. It is a battle. Come on. All right, that mounted up nice with good holes in it this time. There we go, choke's all hooked up. Go ahead and toss our fuel onto it from our temporary tank here. Well, I don't see fuel pouring out just yet, so that's a good sign. All right, carburetor's completely hooked up. I got a temporary fuel tank sitting here. I got a extremely temporary air filter hooked up to it and a battery connected. I believe it's time to give this a go. Oh, and the air valve is opened up because you have to have the air open to get it running. Otherwise it'll build too much pressure, make it hard to start. So I think we're all ready. Contact! Oh, good sign. Wanted to go. I'm not sure what the deal is there with the throttle. Acts like it's not getting enough fuel now. Yeah, maybe I adjusted that float a little too tight. Well, I found the problem, or part of the problem at least. The way I had this temporary tank sitting here, it was not delivering the filler neck on the tank wasn't covered up, so wasn't getting enough fuel down in there to carburetor. Plus, I see a bunch of dirt floating around in the bottom of this tank, which I know I checked it before I put it on here and it was clean, so not sure what to say about that. I have the main tank actually cleaned up and ready to go, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish assembling it and we'll connect it. Alright, I think this is like take number 78 or 83, something like that. Contact! She burped a bit there. Well, that's a good start. Now we just need to fine tune on this the air system to figure out how to keep this thing running right. Okay, I got it pushed over here by the door so that we're not choking on all the carbon monoxide. Go ahead and give this another go. Well, it just fires right up there. Give her a little choke this time. We're still sitting at about 100 psi though. So it's like after we're getting up to pressure and it throttles down. Yeah, see something with that system. After it throttles down, it should also be unloading so that it's not trying to compress more air. I think that's what's stalling us out right now. So I'm going to have to scratch my noodle and examine this system a bit to make sure it's unloading properly. All right, we're going to get started back on our air compressor after probably almost a year. I'd say it's probably time to jump back on this project.
Alright, so I think I actually lost a couple clips here somewhere along the line. I removed the fuel tank from the unit because it had some stuff in it I wanted to get out of there, so I cleaned it out a little bit, and the fuel settlement bowl had a bad leak to it. I couldn't get it to seal up right, so I had to remove the tank for that as well. And also, after the last clip you guys just saw, I did play around and get it to run a little bit better, and the unloader seemed to be working, so I don't know if it was just gummed up at first or what the deal is there, but it still wasn't running perfect yet.
So, actually I lied. First thing we're going to do is pull its air cleaner, because I just noticed that the brackets that hold it on are busted. Yep, we're going to need to fix that. Alright, I got the air cleaner prepped up here for welding. This upper bracket was snapped completely off. These two are cracked up about 10 ways to Sunday, and then the bottom two mounts are also broken off entirely, so wasn't hanging on there by much. We'll fire up the big blue hot glue gun here and hopefully make it all stick back together. Alright, got it all welded up there. Not a whole lot of metal down here to purchase onto, but pretty happy with it. I've got these cracks welded up. This metal is not super thick, so got to be careful. I did end up blowing through right here. There was a stress crack, and this metal here is even thinner than this bracket. So I did blow a little hole there, and it took me a few minutes of spraying some bubble gum to get it built back up, but looks pretty good now. Just going to shoot that with some paint, and we're going to be good. You'll never see these anyways. On the upper bracket here, I did have to grind down this little spot here to make it flat because it mounts up against that spot. But well, that's way more sturdy than it used to be. Alright, here we are back on the fuel tank. I tried to save the sediment bowl here. I love these old glass sediment bowls. They're really nice. They're easy to clean, and they do work pretty darn well at separating out water and dirt from the fuel. However, the way this works is there's a needle and seat in here, and basically to shut the fuel off, you just run the valve down, and it deadheads into a seat and stops the fuel from going by it. Well, this one here was so nasty and corroded up that it actually corroded the seat to where it won't seal anymore. So unfortunately that means this thing is junk. I did try even putting an O-ring down in the seat. I tried putting an O-ring down in the seat out of desperation to see if that would seal it off. And even that didn't work, unfortunately. So this guy has got to come off of here, and I ordered us a new one. This one, though, is a Tiltonson made in the USA in Toledo, Ohio. And where you want to guess this one's made at. It's another bummer. Yeah, this one doesn't say where it's made, so you know where it's made. But, yeah, I'd rather have the bigger one. But this will work. Alright, so when it comes to fuel fittings, there's special PTFE tape you can use to make sure that these pipe threads seal. I also like to use this Loctite 565. This stuff works pretty darn good. And these straps are a bit of a pain in the rear to get started. Alright, I think the fuel system is officially done. Well, I'm not even positive I'm going to use this thing enough to justify it, but I went down to Rural King and snagged a new battery for this thing. Perfect. I'll try to clean these terminals up a little bit first, and I got some of that fancy spray protectant stuff that we're supposed to put on here, keep them from corroding. Now a visit from everybody's favorite terminal installation tool. Alright, well, I'm pretty bummed out here. I was going to throw the hood back on and really make this thing look complete for the end of the video, but I ran out of quarter 20 bolts. The ones that were in it when I took it off were a hodgepodge of random, inappropriate bolts. So, looks like I'll be hitting the hardware store in the morning to make those look a bit nicer. Let's throw some gas in this thing, though, and see if we can't get it to run good enough to run the sandblaster. I'm pretty sure it's going to run. Let me know down in the comments if you guys hate the time change as much as I do. It's like 4:30 and it feels like it's 7 or 8 o'clock at night. I hate the time change. I think we should do away with it, but that's just my opinion. Let's get some gas in this beauty and see if it's going to fire up. Alright, that was probably 2 gallons or so. Let's see where that gets us. Alright. I think we're ready to go. Contact! Oh, it sucked the choke in on its own. Contact! Man, this is such a unique sounding machine. I don't know if it really comes through on the camera. It's a little loud. It could use a better muffler, but it just sounds really unique. It sounds like nothing I've ever heard. problem. It's like it can't keep the RPMs up after the unloader kicks in. Boys. Woohoo! Guys, this thing is working awesome. It runs this, I think this is a 100-pound pressure pot sandblaster I have. It runs it effortlessly, pretty much. Look at that, I only spent 20-30 seconds over here really doing that. Maybe a minute. And it's half dark, so I really can't see what I'm doing. And it just blew that stuff right off of there. Everybody's been telling me I need a sandblaster for a long time, and I've had one since before I've even had the channel. But yeah, it's just never really had a good compressor to push it indoors. I have a big compressor, but I never had an outdoor compressor that could really run it, so this is going to be a game changer here. I really wish I would have had this compressor done and sandblasted the entire grater before I went ahead and wasted all my time wire wheeling. We could have ended up with a better result, but man, oh man. Well, I would consider that a very successful first test run. This should not have taken me this long. This was not a hard project, but one of those ones that just kept getting pushed off because it wasn't something I really needed urgently. Now that I have it, I think I will probably end up using it a fair amount. Running that sandblaster is going to be really nice with this thing. And it's really not too bad. I think I might put a little bit quieter muffler on it. And going to, of course, get these bolts to finish off bolting the hood down correctly. But other than that, she's cherry. This thing had absolutely no trouble at all keeping up with that sandblaster. I have a 5-horse, 80-gallon air compressor that normally it pretty much uses that thing non-stop to run that sandblaster. But this thing, you know, it idled down, it would run, and it would rev up for a couple seconds, build that air back up, and then idle back down. Really, this thing idled way more than it was throttled up, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm sure this isn't the most fuel-efficient compressor in the world, but I think for as little as I'm going to use it, I think it's going to be just fine. Plus, I'm just in love with the styling on this machine. I have been since I got it. Everything from the badging to the brass plaques. It's just a very unique looking unit. And I'm proud to have it in the collection here, I guess. I've got a pretty good habit of writing the dates I acquire stuff on items like this when I purchase them. And according to the date I wrote, it means I got this thing in June of 2019. And I started working on it the day I brought it home. So this is probably the longest project on the channel to date. Or one of them at least. If you recall back to the first video on the compressor here, you'll remember that the oil that was in this thing was really thick, sludgy syrup. So now that I got this thing running good and I can use it, I think tomorrow I'm probably going to end up doing a bunch of sandblasting with this thing. And then after the thing has run and gotten good and hot, I'm going to go ahead and drain the oil out and put some nice fresh stuff in there, and hopefully that pulls a lot of that sludge out. But anyways, I think that's probably about it for me and the Schramm Pneuma Power compressor here. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a big old thumbs up. It really helps the channel out and doesn't cost you guys a dime. And if you haven't already, be sure you click that subscribe button so I can see you on the next episode. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.